So yeah, as I said before, I am Chris Paschke. I am the executive director in charge of information security and a bunch of other cool tech stuff for Jeffco. And I want to kind of just discuss what's going on both at Jeffco and at home with our students' digital security. So what I'd really like to do is have conversations. So I really want to stop at a few points during the presentation and see what resonates with you all as parents, what resonates with you all as community members, and really kind of see like what concerns you have. Because if we don't have a conversation, then really I'll be giving like a bunch of facts that we can probably all read online. So I think the true value is a little bit of talking, which is gonna make it hard for the video, but I'll try to do the best that I can to repeat questions. So let's start out with kind of basic introductions. We'll kind of step through some cyber risks. We'll discuss what the district is doing to mitigate against those risks for families. I'll stop and see what sort of input you have as far as district initiatives. We'll start to suggest what families can do, but a lot of this is family choice, so I'll keep those suggestions broad and really see what sort of opportunities we have for conversations around what families can do. And then also see what additional needs you all as families would have from the district, because that's really the value of me coming out and talking to folks. So is that okay for an outcome? So I can start to ground the presentation or the topic. What sort of devices are you all using at home? You know, I am a tech nerd. My wife is a brand new assistant principal, but used to be a band director at Devlin. So like we are a household full of Macs and a bunch of iOS devices, and like we have tech everywhere. So what do you have at home? Family devices, kids devices. Are they Macs and PCs, or are they leaning into iOS or Android-based devices?
We have
all of them.
All of them.
Yes.
All the above.
All the above. That's pretty common.
Students are issued Chromebooks.
Yep. So yeah, students issued Chromebooks across the board. In Three Creeks, do you guys have iPads still, or is it Chromebooks now?
Kindergarten and fourth grade
Okay.
are still using iPads this year.
Okay, kindergarten through 4 iPads.
No, K and 4.
Okay.
Just 2
Oh,
grades.
okay. Oh, so it's kind of matriculating out.
Right.
Yes, okay. So working our way towards Chrome OS devices. Perfect. Kind of dig a little bit more into introductions. I've been at Jeffco for 15 years. I started out as basically the information security department of one. I was brought on to really start to focus on information security efforts. At that time, there was a lot of issues around staff use of technology, issues around student use of technology that weren't being handled consistently as the district, and that was 15 years ago, got the district into a bit of trouble, so they wanted to kind of right-size that. From there, we've grown where now it's myself and 5 individuals on the information security team. So for K-12, we're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as InfoSec goes. We used to be leading the metro area as far as resources for information security, but DPS has found some interesting grants and some interesting opportunities, and now they're one-upping us in some of our efforts, and I'm competitive, so I need to figure out how to get us back up there, but we have an industry standard information security department, and we're focused on all aspects of InfoSec, from the apps to incident response to staff use, student use, and all kind of the viruses and cool hacker stuff you see in the news. Before Jeffco, I worked for Raytheon and Accenture supporting different government contracts. One of the cool contracts I got to support was the U.S. Antarctic research program, so I got to go down to Antarctica and audit cool government computer systems, so that was pretty fun. And like I said before, in my spare time, I spend a lot of time with high school, middle school bands. So fall, I'm usually on a football field with some electronics, helping some kids out. So that's me in a nutshell. So like I said, like when we dig into what we want to talk about around risks with tech, they're pretty straightforward as far as our student-based risks. And this is pretty, as I researched around the internet, as we dug into Jeffco incident response statistics and kind of fun fact around that, Jeffco as a whole, we deal with around 450 to 600 different moderate or higher information security incidents throughout a calendar year. I wouldn't call that alarmingly high. You know, we have 250,000 individuals using our computer systems at any one time. We have about 150,000 devices to pushing 200,000 devices on busy days connecting to our network. So that type of activity is you know, pretty much par for the course. And this is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing in the news. A lot of the risks are, you know, cyberbullying is one of the biggest issues we deal with on the student side of things. Cyber predators are an issue that's very newsworthy, but we'll get into that. It's not as prevalent as folks might think. That posting of information online, like that is definitely an issue that we're seeing more and more catch up to individuals. Phishing is probably one of the biggest incidents that we deal with that's not directly related to our users' use of technology. We probably deal with a moderate to high level phishing incident once every day and a half at the district. And those range from credit card fraud types of issues, gift card fraud, to impersonating principals and other people. Yes, it happens all the time. It's interesting, right? Because students, staff members, and administrators, our lives in K-12 are public, right? A lot of the work that we do, the ultimate goal is to show it off in one way or another. So what we're doing is right here, like this is the SAC, right? So SAC committee is online. That schedule is very public. It's on the school website. Anyone can look up and see that the principal's there, DTL, and a few other individuals. So what a Fisher can do in these cases is literally reference. They can pretend to be the principal, say, I'm at a SAC meeting, I want to give a gift card to such and such member of the SAC committee. I'm busy right now, could you buy me a gift card? These are one of the common themes that we get, and they reference specific activities within the district because it's pretty easy for individuals to find that. Online scams, malware, and all that stuff. So is this what you're expecting in a general sense for threats impacting your family? Did I miss anything? No? Okay. What's most important to you all? It's going to be boring if I'm just talking.
For me, it's teaching my 8th grader who has a phone, like just how to navigate, you know, technology, the social media world. Like
Yeah,
it's hard to say no to. I mean, with all of his friends on Snapchat and TikTok, and
Yep.
I was very against it for a long time, but that's how a lot of his friends communicate. The swim team communicates in
Yes.
Snapchat. So
Yes.
it's just teaching those brains that are not fully formed yet and can't make those great decisions, like just how to help navigate that as a parent and then teach our children.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep them safe.
And you're right. Like the Devlin High School color guard, you know, a couple guys and a bunch of gals on the field with flags and costumes. They chat on Discord of all things. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's for hardcore gamers, you know. Yes. So I yep. So that's a very real risk. Any other risks that we want to dive into?
How about for, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, like, just being in school and on their technology, just making sure that there's, like, nothing's just popping up, like they're researching, like they're looking at a video
Yes,
that's school
yeah.
related, but then
Yep.
something
Yep.
very inappropriate can pop up. I know that people have been concerned, and that's
Yep,
something
yep.
that feedback that we got, so I just wanted to share.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I think digital citizenship, just knowing when they can be online and talking with their friends, because during class, they can still email their friends. They have all of the iWatches, so even if their phones are put away, they're on their watches or trying to contact friends. And just having that self-control and teaching that self-control of the kids, that this is our work time,
Yeah, and I think that will be a topic that I'll wanna bring back at the district level and see like where we can focus on that self-control aspect as well. Okay, perfect. So we'll kind of use this as a jumping off point and then we can jump in from there. So kind of stepping through the risks, like cyberbullying seems to be the issue that comes up the most at Jeffco. You know, points that were made before, like all aspects of technology are collaborative, from our watches to Discord and online chat. And really, if we start to like think about like taking technology away or doing some draconian measures like that, really least common denominator, like there's nothing stopping people from collaborating and chatting in just a Google document. So like trying to stop uses of technology really ends up being like a fruitful effort, right? Turning off different things. It's really leaning into like how to use technology correctly. So these are kind of the stats that we're seeing, and they're probably really small for this size screen. But you know, like about 40% of youth between 12 and 17 say that they've actively been cyberbullied. Instagram seems to be the area that cyberbullying happens the most. And as family members, like my recommendation would be not to take Instagram away, it's just being used the most, right? So that's just causality. That doesn't mean that Instagram is any worse or better than anything else. The interesting fact that I saw was that 83% of youth feel that social media companies should be doing more. So that gives me a little hope for the future that we can start to drive some of this change at the national level as these younger folks have more and more of an opportunity to vote and do that sort of thing. So they're expecting a lot out of technology, and right now they're getting beat up by it, basically. And related to that, I kind of looping a few of these activities into kind of groups so we can talk about mitigating them together. Cyber predators is another thing. So we, at the district level, like I said, we see cyberbullying happening fairly regularly, and it's stuff that we can manage through. Cyber predators, it makes the news a lot, but research is showing, and what we're seeing at the district as well, is that it doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it usually ends up being obviously more serious than we'd like it to be. At the district level, we probably have 1 to 5 cyber predation types of issues at the district level every year across all of our students. But you kind of compare that to hundreds of bullying issues, so like that's kind of the ratio that we're seeing in Jeffco. And the interesting fact that we've seen guidance from both kind of the FBI, from other research, and what we've seen by investigating our own incidents is the cyber predation. Like if a kid is empowered to use technology correctly, so taught good digital citizen practices, that predator will quickly move on to another target. Like I think the key that, as I was doing some research to fill in the gaps to talk to you all, is like these empowered conversations between family members and their students to use technology the right way and to just say no. A lot of these people are really lazy, for lack of better terms, and they're gonna go on to the next target if we can empower our students and our family members to just stand up for themselves, kind of push back a little bit, and that predator will move on.
Kind of the same with any bully, right?
It really is,
They go
right?
for
Like,
the easy target.
So a lot of these issues, right? You go back to the slide before, like these are people issues, like they're not as much technology issues. So technology is just a medium for this sort of stuff to happen. When we talk at some of the district level around this stuff, like we use analogies like, you know, like Google might be the equivalent of a hallway in a school, right? And we can monitor a hallway so far, but we don't want to get into sort of police state type of monitoring of what's going on, because then we impede on students' rights. So like, yeah, those analogies are good analogies to make. So yeah, like the predation, like this is kind of some facts around that. Like I said, like only 5% of kids are reporting seeing that compared to the cyberbullying. So it's something to be on the lookout for, but it's not something that you should steer your family around based off the data, basically, right? And there's kind of two types of predation. What we've seen, you know, at both the district level and what we've seen kind of in these studies are these two items here, kind of some type of predation that's sexual in nature, where they're asking for pictures or some sort of explicit content, and it's quick and annoying. And I can say for a fact what we've seen when we have investigated this at the district level is that if your child is empowered to stand up to these predators, that they just go away. I can't say 100%, right? None of this stuff is 100%, but we've seen through our data that we've collected over the past 7 years of really digging into incident response data, that type of, you know, show this or do that, like that can be quickly swatted away by just a strong, empowered individual on the other end of that conversation. The grooming gets a little stranger for families, and that, I think that's a good point to bring up. What was your name? Megan. I'm terrible with names, I'll try to use a few of them. So what Megan said about taking technology away, what we have seen through our incident response is that methodology is exactly what Megan said. If you take it away, it's not gonna work. We've had a couple more grooming type of predation issues at the district level, and what we've seen is the predator moves from such and such social media, parent takes it away, they groom the individual to set up another email account, parent finds that, takes it away, they groom the individual to go here to take it away. One of the more serious issues that we saw that we literally resulted in us working with law enforcement to try to catch a kid from leaving home. They went down to the lowest common denominator as they worked through the Wii video game console, and they set up chat on that, right? So the one point that I want to keep on making through this conversation is empowerment. You know, we're like taking tech away within your family values, right? Like you got to do what your family has to do, but just taking tech away, when we're talking about the most serious of issues, our data shows us within the district that is not successful. It's really those empowered conversations that go a long way. And I'll stop there. Does anyone have any comments or reflections there? Because that's, you want to keep your kids physically safe, so this is probably the biggest topic that we can dive into if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
So it was, you know, wanting to keep, again, not take away the technology, but
Yes.
still, he's 13 and want to parent, you know, be a parent and want to monitor. And, you know, I've seen the things like the advertisements for like Bark.
Yes.
Being able to monitor, but like a lot of those platforms like TikTok, Snapchat don't necessarily allow it, or there's differences between like the Apple versus Android.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I don't know, I'm just kind of curious of what your thoughts are on that, or what we as parents could do if we want to, like, you know, I want to give him his freedom and I want to give him like his privacy,
Yes,
but also
yes.
be a parent and monitor some of that. So.
Yeah. So my suggestion, being a parent of 2 dogs that, like I said, hangs out with a bunch of high school kids, so I do hear kind of what they do and don't do when I'm kind of helping out in my volunteer life, is set up your expectation, your safety net, right? And you can be transparent as family. You don't have to be sneaky. They're gonna figure out like what your practices are regardless, right? So tools like Bark, Securely Home, which is linked in a later slide, we'll kind of skip over this because we're talking. Securely Home is a good tool that we have on our district Chromebooks. Is everyone familiar with that? Raise the hands. Like that's a huge, great tool. So yeah, that along with apps that you install on the devices, and possibly understanding how your home network works as well. But then from there, it's filling in the gaps. And what I mean by that is you know how your family members act, right? You know the apps they typically use, you know who they typically talk to, you know where they typically do their computing, right? Wherever that would be. What we see is none of these technologies are perfect, and you can set up a giant safety net, and then it ultimately goes to that predation example that I gave, where they just go to a lowest common denominator. But if you understand generally how the technology works and generally what your practices are, your family's practices and your students' practices, if you notice a gap in that activity, and this is what we do best as InfoSec professionals, if you notice a gap in that, the gap is telling you something. Like that gap in normal behavior, normal traffic on BARC, normal traffic on your home router, means that there's something you should be looking into further. And as a parent, you can look into, is that shoulder surfing the device? Is that doing some more research on individual apps? But really that gap, like you see this normal activity at home with your family members, these devices, but then there's this steer left or steer right that almost 100% of the time means something. Does that make sense, or do we want to talk about that more? Because Securely Home is a great example, or Securely in general. Securely is a tool that we install on the operating system level of our Chrome OS devices. And it works really great in the web browsers. It works pretty good in apps, but there's some apps and extensions that students can install in the Chrome web browsers that can get around it. And that ends up being a cat and a mouse game. Like we open tickets with Securely, they update the technology, then kids find something else. But each time that cat and mouse game happens, you as a family member will absolutely see a gap in your child's internet browsing history. You'll see work. Hey, what's going on for this 45 minutes? I thought he was on a device. That tells you something. Like that is kind of how to be a cyber sleuth and cyber professional, is understanding what normally happens, and when you see that hole in that normal activity, that's when you have to start asking questions.
I have a thought for Megan. So being a parent, my kids are older, but they had phones when they were just coming out. And my kids were tired, the teachers were saying the kids were falling asleep in school and all. They started taking their devices at night, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever, and put them in our bedroom to charge overnight.
That's on his
So-
contract, he has to do that.
Yes, and that I did not cover because it's kind of family values, but that is best practice. Like the best practice still is, what we see at the district level is parents that'll reach out to us and say, why can't I protect kids between 9 and 12 o'clock? Well, you can, you just take the device and put it in your dresser. Like, I don't want to be like insulting, but like that's, like I said, like I'm just the father of 2 dogs, so I don't get it. But like, that's ultimately setting up those practices where you can fill in the gaps as a human. That goes a long way, because then you have that baseline of tech knowledge. You kind of see your kid's mood, you see how they're interacting. So kind of going back to the presentation, I'll skip over parts we already talked about. So what is the district doing? We have a bunch of resources that schools can use that we present to kind of talk around digital citizenship, cyberbullying, that sort of thing. That content is probably just as good as the content that we're talking about. It's humans filling in the gap. We have a very robust set of web filters. We have on-premise web filters, some big fancy firewalls that filter any sort of traffic that comes in and out of our environments. We have off-site web filters, so that's Securely Home. We have kind of the 2 more important ones are Securely Classroom and Securely Home. So I guess Securely just in general is the off-site filter. So Securely Classroom allows teachers to have a little bit of a window into what's going on into students' devices. I'm seeing a shaking of the head. Does it not work?
We're using it, but we've found a lot of glitches.
Yes.
Kids are able to
They can use
Yes, with the different browser,
Yeah, they're
tricks.
able to get around it, and we're not catching it, and sometimes even with the securely home, the parents are like, it looks like my kid has been doing, yada for the last 3 hours, and
Yep,
I know they weren't, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it gives false data that way, and sometimes it gives teachers false data, like, it looks all great, but not
Yeah,
so much,
yeah.
that kid is totally over there just playing video games.
Well, and
So-
when you look on the teacher's screen, it'll look like, somebody's on something, maybe they're on math and I teach ELA.
Yep.
But I'm seeing their screen and they're on what they're supposed to be on, but that's not what it shows me. Even if I refresh, it still shows that they're maybe in math class when I see that they're doing it.
Yes,
So
and
it's a
that's that gap thing, right, is, I guess, so what can we do at the district level to better inform around, like, that gap idea? Is it just kind of being proactive with those communications? Because that would be an area to focus on as like a teacher, right? If you see all these holes, like normal activity, you got your 30 screens up or whatever, normal activity, but then these students just, you're not seeing much of anything.
They're just
Right.
getting the wrong information is what they're getting, so they're getting the information, it's
Okay.
just the wrong information.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
not until they literally walk around the room do they get the
Okay,
accurate
okay.
picture of what kids are doing in the room.
yep,
So, and it's not all kids, but for some of our most challenging, it has been a puzzle we have not figured out yet.
yep,
They can
Yep.
have all those extensions.
Yes.
And so they can quickly change from one to the other.
yes, as IT leadership and ed tech leadership is evolving and changing, like we went through some changes, extensions is an area that we're actively looking at again. The InfoSec way to do things would be to whitelist, so we'd only have a very finite set of extensions that we would allow. We have definitely a more open policy right now, and there's some intricacies, Google intricacies that makes it harder to do what we'd ideally like. But that's an area that we are definitely actively exploring throughout the rest of the school year, because those seem to be a big issue.
Maybe that's something we can add to our Monday tech
It's on-
check, is like clear your history and make sure you don't have any extensions that aren't Jeffco approved.
It's on there. And so we do it every Monday.
Oh, okay.
And probably
Great.
every Monday midday they put back
They
on.
Yes. So that, I think we'll probably take more of a moderate approach as a few of my new peers are getting up to speed, but we'll see.
We've also had a lot of problems with securely in Google Classroom, like not working well together, and like our Big Ideas program, so we've run into a number of glitches where it isn't supporting us the way we would like it to.
Okay,
But,
okay,
I'm sure that there are things it's doing, it's just we hear about when there's a problem, so.
yes, yeah. I might have like Lisa Summit reach out to see if we can get some more information and pass it along to securely. Because it is a cat and mouse game
Okay.
as the tech changes.
Well, there are some teachers, I don't use it as often as I used Apple Classroom. I had Apple Classroom up every day. But I don't use securely like that, I don't
Yes.
work around the classroom, but it just doesn't work on a daily basis.
Yep.
So,
I'm an iPad fan, so I'll leave my biases. Yes, it's a little tighter, and we'd have to get into a cool architectural conversation about what makes iOS different than Android OS. But theoretically, yes, it would work better because it's ingrained in Apple's operating system a little better than an extension that's hanging off of Google's operating system on a Chrome device. But we won't go too much deeper than that. So, but yeah, so we offer all that. We also offer software vetting to really start to focus on making sure that we have a good set of curated tools that students can use. The extensions are kind of in that Wild West area software vetting that we're gonna try to see how we can shore up a little bit more. And then I wanted to bring up, like, as we dug through some of the, like this scarier research, I won't go back, around what really keeps kids safe, it really came back to empowered kids. So like sports, activities, like things that are not devices, you know, other trusted adults that aren't you, kids look up to and can talk to. The research shows that an empowered student with an outlet to have a good conversation, that's gonna go way more than any tech. So the more they can be involved with activities and doing that sort of thing where they have trusted adults that they can have semi-informal conversations with, and those adults can actually escalate those conversations if necessary. Every research that I looked at showed that the empowered kids solve most of these social issues. They also said the ability to anonymously bring up concerns goes a long way with students, and just remind everyone of, you know, my physical security peers partnership with the Safe2Tell program. Like that's a good avenue for students to anonymously bring up concerns that they might have. And we work with the DA's office and they take it seriously. And there's a lot of anonymity there. So that's a good avenue. And we have a lot of good partnerships with the DA and law enforcement if there are more serious issues. So that conduit for kids to talk to an adult about what's going on and have those empowered conversations around how to use tech the best goes a long way. And then at Jeffco, we also have a lot of those law enforcement partnerships as well. And then what can you do? And most of this, I think, came up in the conversation already. That research shows that empowered students make more of a difference than taking apps away. So understanding how apps work, understanding the human risks with apps, and it's the same risks as humans to humans. So just, you know, apply that to whatever the app of the day is. Having that general understanding of apps, sites, extensions that are being used, so you as a parent can fill in those gaps and identify those gaps. That's when to focus on maybe the more difficult conversations with students. And to do that, you can explore apps together, features, and, you know, be curious in a proactive way around what your students are doing online, so you can understand what's going on. And then, like I said, those gaps as well. And the more conversations you all can have as parents and collaborating around what you're seeing, like that body of knowledge goes a long way. Because when we do InfoSec work at Jeffco, we have all these fancy tools and we use them as reactionary tools to really help us determine what humans are doing online as well. One pointed question I wanted to have for you all was Securely and some of our other web filtering tools has more invasive, what I would classify as invasive filtering that we as Jeffco have kind of taken a middle of the road approach and have not really leaned into turning that on. And I'll describe invasive. That would be, it looks at words in searches, words in emails, words in social media posts, would start to use an AI to profile, like this might be an at-risk behavior of bullying, suicide, other very serious things, and would alert school principals to that potential behavior. The pro is you might be alerted to that potential behavior. The con is you could maybe out a student that doesn't want to be outed. You could run into First Amendment issues. You could run into all sorts of other issues. And us as a district trying to be good stewards to about 70,000 students' use of technology, we think that that might go too far. This small group of parents, like, what's your feedback on our stance there? Because that technology, for us, we'd have to train a lot of principals, and it would increase school workload a lot because we would want to handle it consistently. But technology-wise, it's a check of the box to turn it on.
Chris, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah.
You got me thinking about my own kids in high school now.
Yep.
When you're talking about their devices, like, so when our kids are in and they're on their cell phones, is that data going through Jeffco too? Like, are they seeing those? Like,
If they're connected to the Wi-Fi,
yeah,
yes.
okay. And then, so, like, you could see their social media posts through that potentially? I guess we
Yeah,
could
so-
be thinking about, like, is that, like, what are you, like,
Yes,
when they
yes.
come in the building?
There's also really invasive technology, really invasive, and this, I'm just bringing this up as just a fun fact, and it's not fun at all, but there's also technology out there you can buy as a service, products that, and law enforcement uses this, I don't think any Jeffco uses it that I'm aware of, but they put geo fences around whatever you want to geo fence around, and they aggregate any public social media post and provide reports back. So on network, on cell net, wherever, as long as because all this stuff's geotagged, as long as it's happening within cell towers or your geolocation, you can get really creepy information, in my opinion. We really don't do that, but that is technology that is out there, and that's only publicly available. All of these providers, Snapchat, Facebook, Google, Apple, they're super privacy focused, right? Like you saw the kind of famous or infamous Tim Cook versus the FBI public fight over, I forget what the terrorism issue was, but Apple would not give up its keys to some terrorist-related chat. These companies take privacy really seriously, so the likelihood of us being able to intercept a social media post going across our wires, even though a device is connected to those wires, is low. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but your device would be shooting up all sorts of warnings if we tried to intercept that, because it would notice that it was being intercepted, if that makes sense. But that's a good question. On Chrome OS devices, we have that ability to get in the middle of those. Jeffco-owned Chromebook devices, or any Jeffco-owned devices, we have the ability to get in the middle of that because we tell the device to trust us. So that's just on Jeffco devices. Even then, it's an uphill battle because of the crazy things that these companies are really doing to make sure that their platforms are secure from the NSA, to be frank. So NSA, my 5 employees at Jeffco, like, it's still an uphill battle, even on a Jeffco-owned device. So that's a good question.
My kids aren't doing anything weird there.
I know, right? I know, like when I go to like these band conferences or whatever, like I'll see like Jeffco teachers, they'll bring up, hey, I searched for something, this popped up. I'm like, we collect like 800 gigabytes of logs every day, like we don't know and we don't care. So yeah, that's a good question.
No, I do
But
think
then,
that's interesting, and like from my perspective as just being a leader of a school, like, I think for safety, that feels really like something we'd want to know, but then
Yes.
I also think their kids, right, and do different things in different spaces, so I don't know how I feel about that.
yeah, and
I like that, so I like
that's hard for us too, because we have the ability to do a lot of investigation on a lot of other platforms in the district, and the benefit to that is that we control the consequences as a school district, right? And with cooperative parents and good kids, like the consequences are very proportionate. If it's a moderately serious issue on a social media platform, like I said, the district doesn't have as much power as you think we would to really investigate those. We often have to go to law enforcement, who uses subpoena power with varying degrees of success, and then the consequences are a little more out of our hands. So that's kind of the world we live in. Like it still makes sense to give access to these tools because they're tools that our kids are using in the real world. But that's kind of a risk that we're actively managing against. So yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions on that topic? Cool, so that's a good one. Phishing. I'm trying to think, because we spend a lot of time talking about the most important thing, which like I said, I appreciate the conversation. Phishing in Jeffco, like I said, is probably our second biggest issue that we deal with. We deal with it all the time. Here's the crazy facts, like basically, what was the big whiz bang? It might be on another slide. It was something like 1 out of every 10 emails or something like that. You know, it's bad. Phishing is out there all the time. So this is probably the second most important thing I can do to tell you as family members and users of technology. So how many different ways can we be phished? We spend 14 hours talking about all the different ways, and it's scary because there's literally an infinite amount of ways that people can try to social engineer us. But how do we really be thoughtful around preventing ourselves from falling victims to being phished? It's thinking about that next step. So what us IT security professionals call is the pivot. What do they do after they get a bite on that phishing email? And that's simple. Like really, they're really only going after a few things. They want access to our resources. So for you as family members, they want access to your computer, right? They want to add it to a botnet. They might want to scrape your credit card information. They want access to resources. So if you kind of dig into that a little bit, don't click on stuff. Like that's really what that's getting to. There are only a few ways that they can get access to your resources, and I'll dig into that in the next slide. In an environment like Jeffco, they want to explore. They want to get access to that first set of resources, and then they want to use it to pivot around the network to try to get access to more and more devices. And this is what you're seeing in the news with the ransomware attacks. An individual will likely phish a individual, you know, on a network with lower privileges. They'll use that individual to kind of pivot around the network by gaining access to all sorts of other machines or devices. And then what they do in an environment like ours is they try to escalate privileges. They try to get privileges of a user like mine, who can install a lot of things on a lot of devices. What the phisher does then is installs the ransomware stuff on all the devices across the school district, hits the button, and then we're in the news, right? So that's what happens at the district level, but we're more focused at home. So they also want money, right? That's another resource that a phisher wants. And they want information, you know, about you. They want your health information, social security numbers, all of that. So as you're interacting with technology, if you're seeing questions that come in that are indirectly trying to get to something like that, question it. Don't answer it. Like that's really how to think through the phishing attacks. It's what are they going to do next with that information? And if you're seeing some random request coming in that wants access to one of your resources by clicking on something, you know, they would then explore, so that's something you don't have to worry about as much. Want access to some money or want access to some information, that's really what you should be looking out for as consumers around these phishing attacks, instead of trying to find all the different ways that they can kind of bamboozle you out of stuff. And really, let's see, oops, I went the wrong way. Really, there's a few things that you can do to really kind of Fort Knox your computer a little bit to protect yourself if something does come in. So all of you Windows and Mac users, right? Like most folks have Windows and Mac. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and this is different depending on your OS and what version of the OS you have, this is the most important thing you can do. You want to compute as a standard user on your device. So what that means is, when I go back to the phishing attacks, right, like ultimately they want to install something on your computer or suck information off your computer. They can only do that if they have the rights to do that as you, the user that they're interacting with on the computer. Does that make sense? So you in a web browser, you as an email consumer, you doing anything on a computer, if you have not giving yourself rights to install software or do anything like that on your computer, there's no way you can mess up. Like theoretically and in practice, like you just install antivirus, you can do all that stuff. But if you set yourself up as an account that can't install software, you can make a lot of mistakes and they're not gonna come back to bite you. Does that in theory make sense? So in theory, what you do is you would install, or you would set up standard users on your Windows or Mac device, and you would set those up as your day-to-day computing. So then if you do accidentally click on something, it can't do anything because it just doesn't have the rights to do that. You then set up another user, an administrative user that you only log into when you want to install new software. And then you don't give your kids that password. I can find some, if that's something you all are really interested in, I can find some help articles, but it kind of is different, like Mac OS this versus Mac OS that, it's different clicks. Windows is drastically different depending on the version. But that general principle goes a long ways because, like I said, you click on anything you want, and as you, the user, clicking on a web browser window, if you can't install something, the hacker can't either. So we kind of turned that access off at the district years ago. A lot of our staff members yelled at us, but that's why. Chrome and iOS devices, natively, unless they're jailbroken, they have that principle kind of built in because the App Store is that trusted kind of administrative user that helps with that. So on an iOS or Android device, it's less of a risk than on a Windows or Mac device. And then from there you go down the list, right? And it's all stuff we've talked about before. The antivirus, keeping your software up to date. Really, most of the malicious things that we're seeing on devices are still Word documents or PDF documents. So be extra cautious of those, Windows, Mac, or any OS device that you're on. Like those are definitely things to be aware of. And with your kids, cheat codes and pirated material is the best way to get your bank account information stolen, so keep them away from those websites. Yes, your computer will be running slow forever. And I'm not sure how, because those websites pop up forever and ever, but yes. And then the last thing as well, more and more of your devices at home are internet connected. Make sure you update your TV and all this stuff now as well, because there's more and more vulnerabilities that are actually run against our devices. Yeah, that one made people think. Right, but TVs have cameras and mics and speakers, and like it's long shot, but you're seeing more and more of these IoT devices being attacked. Us as a district, like we're working on ways to really put those on areas of our network that we really cordon off and we don't allow interacting with the rest of our network. But you at home, you're stuck with just trying to keep them updated. Questions there? No? Good? But definitely maybe a little more information about the standard user thing? Okay, okay. Was that a new concept to everyone? Yes? No? No? Good, we got a couple no's? Okay, okay, so yes, but that research after research shows that will thwart, it's like 98, 99% of all attacks. Antivirus is nowhere near as effective as that practice. And then from there, like that was kind of the meat and potatoes, and yeah, I figured that would take about an hour if we had some interaction. What can Jeffco do better? Seems like securely is still, and that's, yes, we will always be fighting that battle, so that's one area that we can do a little better in. What sort of resources do parents want? It's late, we're hungry, yes.
I think sometimes it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I want my kids to be safe and be empowered and be educated about things, but sometimes you just don't know what to educate them or, you know,
Yeah,
how to help
yeah.
them, so I think a lot of things she shared will, you know, help a lot of us.
Was this too basic? Should I be more advanced? No? Yeah, yeah. Any topics that were interesting that you really want to dive into more? Dinner. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, like that's it. I'll share this presentation. So there's some resources and, you know, but they're kind of basic because as you research these too, like so many of these privacy related websites have good information, but they also have a political and or religious slant. So I didn't want to stumble all over anyone's beliefs, so I kept it very basic there for a purpose because you guys know what's best for your families, so that's intentional there. So these are really dry.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
All right, well, good.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you so much.